Good evening and aloha. My name is Denise Yamaguchi. I'm the Executive Director of the Hawaii Agricultural Foundation. Thank you for joining us tonight for our fifth Eat, Think, Drink, a series we started in 2016 to foster a dialogue on important issues related to agriculture and food in Hawaii. Our hope is that through a fun and interactive exchange, we can help community members like you see eye to eye on issues that sometimes divide us, and to inspire you to learn more about the challenges and opportunities that exist in ag and our food industry. Tonight's topic is food and friendships, how government, business, and community can work together. You'll hear three people from the public and private sectors who work tirelessly on invaluable partnerships that aim to reclaim our food and our economic independence. After the thinking portion, you'll be able to talk story with our panelists while also eating dishes created by our chefs that reflect our plantation heritage. Before we begin, I would like to thank our keynote speaker, Donavan Dela Cruz, State Senator of the 22nd Senatorial District, the man behind the transformational Whitmore Project. Prior to becoming a senator, Donavan served on the City Council for 7 years. Now as senator, he chairs the powerful Committee on Ways and Means and sits on the Committee on Education. He is passionate about making Hawaii sustainable from its economy to its environment. Our two panelists are also key players in agriculture and have worked on partnerships like the Whitmore Project. First, Mara Kaichi is a senior assistant of the Hawaii Department of Agriculture's ADC, Agriculture Business Development Corporation. She handles a range of issues with an emphasis on land and agriculture infrastructure and acquisitions. We also have, before joining ADC in 2016, Mara was an attorney and served as the Deputy Attorney General for the State's Department of the Attorney General, where she advised clients on agricultural lending, agricultural land management, and land acquisitions. Stephanie Whalen, or I call her Stevie, is the Executive Director of the Hawaii Agricultural Research Center. She has led the organization during its transformation from a trade association to a nonprofit agricultural research organization. She has more than 40 years of experience in the agriculture industry in Hawaii and has been involved in pesticide registrations, water quality monitoring, environmental regulations, state regulatory issues, and community concerns over agriculture, and more recently, agriculture worker housing. Our moderator this evening is Augie T. As you all probably know, Augie is at the core of our local comedy scene, but what you probably don't know is he's also helped a number of agricultural companies, as well as the Lieutenant Governor's Farm to School movement, as a celebrity to help get AG's message to the community. Now please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Donavan Dela Cruz.
Can we just give Denise and her team a big hand? So I'll start out with the big picture, the macro of where maybe Hawaii should be moving. And this little section, the first section, was a collaboration between myself, members of CTAR, a couple of farmers, a rancher, and we developed just maybe about 10 slides for a strategic direction for ag. And I'll go over that, and then I'll talk about the Whitmore Project and how it fits into the strategic direction. First, an assessment of agriculture, and I don't think we really have a good idea of where everything's at, because the state doesn't have an ag economist, CTAR hasn't had an ag economist for a while, and so we're all really just guessing, unless you talk to every single distributor, every single hotel, every single store, and then compile all that information. So what do we import, and what are local commodities that can be replaced for imports, and what are commodities that can be scaled for value-added products? If we were to start growing those products, which products should be grown in which parts of Hawaii? And I'm going to quickly go over potential pilot projects of growing certain commodities in certain areas. And what does the state have to do, the county have to do to provide the right incentives so that these different pilot projects throughout the state can be supported and successful? And what are the partnerships and next steps? So I think this is a story that a lot of us know already, right? With sugar, pineapple, we've been talking about a transition, and we've been fumbling with it. And we still don't know where we should be headed. I think from a theoretical point of view, we keep talking about diversified ag, but if you were to define that, if you would actually ask yourself, well, what does that mean and where are we headed? I don't think people really have an idea of what that is. And I think it's too big, because it's too big to kind of answer that question from a statewide perspective. But if you answer that question for maybe just Wailua and Haleiwa, and maybe just Waimanalo, or maybe just Hilo, you probably can answer it a lot differently. So we want to identify regions where we can start to match certain commodities and make a go of it. So I'll just give you one example of how we can make an impact. With the Whitmore Project, Larry just had farmed watermelon. And during that time when he farmed watermelon, you can see that we reduced the import of watermelon by 80%. And this is just talking to certain private distributors. Like I said, I couldn't get all the information because there is no ag economist. So we had to call certain distributors to get this info. So we can make a difference. What this told me was, we're not going to maybe 100% import replacement, but maybe we can make a huge dent. And then we have tomatoes, and I think this for a lot of people is probably surprising, because I thought we had more local tomatoes. And the import number is at 60%. So working with CTAR and a lot of the different farmers, we came up with a draft list of fruits that we import that can get replaced, vegetables, aquaculture, and obviously livestock. And certain crops that we can grow and expand and scale up for value-added products. So then what we did is we took the different pilot projects, potential pilot projects, and tried to define which crop grows the best where. And through some research and talking to CTAR agents and farmers, this was our draft. So I'll just focus maybe on Central Oahu. So West Kauai is Kekaha. The state already owns about 6,000 acres of land. ADC manages that. Central Oahu is the Whitmore Project. West Maui, we put that in there because Kapalua has a lot of land for sale, right? All that old Maui land and pine land is still available. East Hawaii, that's Hilo, Hamakua. Leeward Oahu is Campbell Industrial Park and the North Shore. So then we did a mapping. We tried to figure out, okay, who owns that land? Does it have access to markets? And we divided it up in regards to production, processing, and packaging. In some areas, we're probably only going to be able to do production. And so we're going to need somewhere else, maybe a neighboring town, to go and process and package. In other areas, you could do both. I'll give you one example, maybe with Leeward Oahu. Campbell Industrial Park would be a great place for processing, but Waianae Coast may be where we actually grow certain products. So that's when you separate the two. Do we have irrigation? Do we have water? Do we have housing? And are there existing community plans already in place that have some inkling talking about ag? And there are other potential reasons. We just chose those 7s because different island, different location, just to show the possibility. But it can be done throughout Hawaii. And if we really were to invest in ag the way that I'm talking about, then we can really create the jobs that are going to keep local people home or come back. If we were to get these pilot projects up and running, what can the state do? The first, eat and buy local. So we've all saw those buy local campaigns. But if we were to tailor them to a specific commodity that's in season, buy local watermelon, feature the watermelon farmer. Buy local tomatoes, feature the tomato farmer. I think it's too generic to just say buy local. So we've got to put a face to a name, and we got to really identify the commodity. And in working with the Hawaii Ag Foundation and Denise, we were already able to start promoting local commodities that can get scaled up through the Food and Wine Festival. I think for a lot of local people, and Shinho and I have talked about this a while, is we gotta get the local palate to be adjusted to things that we can grow locally. We can scale breadfruit, but how many people are used to eating or using breadfruit? So working with the Hawaii Ag Foundation and Food and Wine, and having them work with the chefs at their event, they can promote the kind of products that we want to scale up. We did that last year with tilapia from Hawaii, and they're going to do that this year with breadfruit. So that's huge for us. And we got to get our state agencies to buy local. That's easier said than done because people have to get food safety certified. There's a lot of things that have to get into place, but we have to have that goal and we have to have a timeline for that. Programs that we could work on, shipping incentives and tax credits. So if you're from a neighbor island, you get a tax credit for every box that's shipped to Oahu. Those are just possibilities. There's Department of Economic and Development programs such as the Enterprise Zone, Foreign Trade Zone. We could put more money in our ag loan programs. ADC and HTDC provide grants for manufacturing. And the state has to bear the brunt for infrastructure. It's too difficult for huge water infrastructure to be the burden of the farmer. And we need more ag land. So this is a graph that I like to use because you need a champion. So it doesn't matter where you're at. Each of those projects that I talked about, may it be West Kauai or Leeward Oahu, someone has to go in the middle. So who's the person in the middle that's going to coordinate the nonprofits, the federal agencies, the workforce readiness, housing, technology? So if people can use this as a template, then we can start to figure out, okay, who do we have to get involved in which region? If you try to do this statewide, it's too overwhelming. So we came up with some next steps: calculate import and export quantities, work on that mapping, and really identify state agencies, county agencies, nonprofits, community. Require state agencies, by at least on a certain timetable, to start buying local. Develop new varieties. Condition leases so that farmers grow food that we're going to eat as far as import replacement. And really make agriculture a priority in the state budget. Some of the things that we want to try to do, at least legislatively, is establish the reimbursement transportation cost program. And with economic development, we can use existing agencies such as HTDC, Hawaii High-Tech Development Corp., HSDC, Hawaii Strategic Development Corp., and there's state housing agencies for workforce housing, working with the Department of Education for pipeline education, working with our community colleges and the university also. So that's kind of where we are with the macro. And then now let's kind of zero in to Whitmore Project. So the Whitmore Project is really an economic development project for Central Oahu. It's about local food production, it creates jobs, it's about partnerships, it's about housing, and it's about living in a community, learning in a community so that you can have the skills to have a good job where you live and have the recreational amenities. So it started off in 2004 where Del Monte had its last harvest. And in 2008, this is when I was still on the city council, there was $25 million dedicated to buying the Galbraith Estate, which was about 1,700 acres. We didn't purchase it till 5 years later. So this is when I was already on in the state senate. The $25 million was because the Army put in money, the county put in money, OHA put in money, and the state put in money. And when everybody put in money, they put conditions on their money. The Army said, we'll put in money, but no housing, because they surround Schofield, the ag land surrounds Schofield. OHA said, we'll put in money, but we want the 500 acres around Kukani Loko. The state put in money, and they said, okay, 200 acres need to be dedicated to small farmers, even though that's not defined. And I don't think anybody thought they should define it, but it's not defined yet. And with that purchase, it started to unroll other things that we might want to purchase to help the original 25 million. Because if not, it's just out there by itself. And it's not going to have the support it needs to really make a dent for ag. So we ended up purchasing the Dole buildings. We ended up purchasing a warehouse in Wahewa. And that's to help with economic development in the town too. And over time, we purchased more and more land. We got money in the budget, and now we're at about 4,100 acres 5 years later. So the landowner and the project coordinator, to a large extent, is really ADC. You know, they were established in 1994, and I'll go over that. But they're the point in the spear right now. And they're working, and we're helping as much as we can because they're short-staffed. They only have 5 people, believe it or not. There were some questions about what does ADC do, but there's only 5 people. ADC is the only agency that has more people on their board than in their staff. So they have a 9-member board, and they only have 5 staff. So how many of us would want 2 bosses per each individual? Zoning, planning, permitting, we've been working with Cassie Sokugawa from the city. They've really helped us a lot, giving us guidance to get into the sustainable community plan, get in the board of water supply plan, working with the county on different types of permits that they can assist us with to get the project running. Community and nonprofit organizations, we're going to be talking a little bit about Wedge, Whitmore Economic Development Group, and the Pineapple Crane and what they're doing. But it has to be a partnership because the state can't fund everything. And the farmer, they're stretched financially as it is. They need some help. So it's coordinating everybody, seeing what they bring to the table, and how can we leverage each other to get the overall goal accomplished. Loans and grants, the nonprofits go out and they help get additional funding for certain components because they need money. Incentives, working with DBED on enterprise zone and foreign trade zone, like I mentioned. Infrastructure, that's where we put in money for water and recycled water. Workforce housing, and working with CTAR so that we can get better educated on food safety regulations and building the future workforce with DOE. So ADC was established in 1994. This is actually in their statute. They're not a regulatory agency. Department of Ag is the regulatory agency. ADC statute says, help with transition of former plantation lands, initiate the development and support of ag facilities, provide solutions to issues facing our ag industry. This is straight from the statute. Extremely broad, with only 4 people. So what is ADC's role in the Whitmore Project? It can provide long-term leases. So we have a few landowners here, and I think some landowners, they'll maybe give a 5-year lease, maybe a 10-year lease. No bank is going to give you a loan for you to put any infrastructure, and neither would you want to build in infrastructure if you only had 5 years or 10 years. The state can lease up the land up to 65 years. So with 65 years, now the farmer can go and get a loan. They can make some investment. What this also does is it changes the kind of crops that we grow. So with a 5-year lease, who's going to do an orchard? No one's going to dig out all the trees and go move it because they got another lease somewhere else. So this helps us do orchards, breadfruit, lychee, mangoes, any other kind of crops that now because you have a long-term lease. ADC can offer rent credit. The investment that the farmer is making can be negotiated so that they have some relief on the rent. Because of the location and the amount of space that ADC owns, we can create critical mass. And because of that, it helps us with food safety. Now the investment into the facilities, you get some rent credit. What I want to also point out is that ADC is not a housing agency. So we don't want to change the statute to say now ADC should build housing. We already have 2 housing agencies, HHFTC and Public Housing Authority, so working with them. And engaging in public-private partnerships. One thing that's for sure, though, is that we need the farmer, because the state doesn't farm. The farmer farms. So this was the first purchase. OHA got the yellow and the light purple. Everything else went to ADC. There was only one well on that piece of property, so we needed some water infrastructure. So now this is what ADC owns, except for the light blue, that's OHA, but everything else colored is ADC. And you can see there's Whitmore. So now, if you live in Whitmore, you know you'll be surrounded by ag land. And that's Wahiawa. So the reason why this is so meaningful for me is that my grandfather was a truck driver for Dole. And we lived in Whitmore Village. He would walk to work. It was a community. It was thriving. And to see it kind of desolate is depressing. So we want to see it active. We want to see businesses. We want to see people working. And that's our goal. This is a piece of property that we bought along Kipapa Gulch. So you can see the freeway in the corner, the bottom corner. That's Kipapa Gulch. If you look toward the left, Kipapa Gulch actually has this plateau right in the middle of it. So ADC bought that plateau. And that was all pineapple. So we haven't used these tools enough. And I think because too many departments work in silos. Even with DBED, when I said, hey, I think we got to do a foreign trade zone, that would help some of the farmers. And they said, we should just wait till the industry comes to us. I thought, no, that's not what we should do. We should try to pursue creating these incentives. We extended the enterprise zone. ADC came up with a water irrigation plan. They're going to continue to do parts of this because they got about $13 million to put in some water irrigation. This is the Wahiawa wastewater treatment plant there. One of the projects that we're working on is right now the Wahiawa wastewater treatment plant, the outfall goes into Lake Wilson. What we want to do is recycle that, and it's R1 water. It's all treated, UV. Instead of it going into the lake, have ADC recycle that water for ag. And so this is the plan for recycled water. Okay, this is an interesting graphic. It's tilted. So North Shore is that way, South Shore is this way. This is Dole and all their 7,000 acres of pineapple. Every red dot was a plantation camp. So my family, my dad lived in Helamano Plantation Camp. You can see right there. Then in the 40s, Dole consolidated all the camps, put them on trucks, and then they created Whitmore Village. So you can see the tract housing, which is Whitmore Village now. The reason why I think this is important is as we talk about what's the future of housing for ag, we should also look at what was the history of housing for ag. This is housing, believe it or not. This was an old chicken feed mill in Arkansas. And when I went to see it, it's all condos now. So when we talk about ag workforce housing in Whitmore Village, I want to make sure it looks like ag. I don't want Kaka'ako looking in Whitmore. We want Whitmore to look like ag. And we're talking about micro units because a lot of the farmers are saying that's what they need. I think Grant is here. So Department of Education, they're working on a pipeline. They're starting, it's not easy to get people interested in farming. So they're working at the elementary school level. I see the principal from Ka'ala. And they're doing a great job in getting kids already interested in ag, from gardening, to cooking. They're working with chefs and trying to start them early so that when they get to the next level of middle school and high school, they sign up for the right classes. With food safety, we're working with HTDC, Department of Ag. This is even though we want the outside of the buildings to look historic in nature, we want the inside of the buildings to be modern for packing, for processing. This is a rendering that the University of Arkansas Community Design Center drafted for ADC, what the potential could be if we were to redesign the tech park. This is a co-working space, Pineapple Crate. It's for tech, it's for ag, it's a partnership with HCDC and ADC. And they're out there. You're all invited July 7th, what time? Noon, to Whitmore. Hope to see you there. Okay, the top photo, that's an old train bridge for when the pineapple used to go into town. So we want to create, and we have money in the budget for it, a pedestrian bridge that connects Whitmore to Wahiawa. So that way the workforce, again, has access to the jobs. We're working with community colleges to develop a value-added product development center. So all the seconds and off-grade, we're looking at 3 or 4 pipelines, spirits, candies, cookies, cosmetics, and really trying to teach how do you develop it, how do you become a business owner in marketing it, selling it, going online, so that we really can take ag products and go more commercial with those kind of products. And the value added is key. You know, there's Kona Coffee, Kula Lavender. Going back to those different 7 pilot projects, each pilot project should have a value added product that they're known for. And CTAR does all the research to figure out what can be grown where. This goes back to working with the city to make sure that the project's in compliance. These are some of the agencies we've been working with to work with the community for nonprofits and loans and grants. And this is Larry Jeffs, which many of you know, and this is what this central area looked like when he harvested watermelon. We had 92 containers of watermelon. 90 of it stayed on Oahu, 2 went to Maui. The problem was they didn't have a sticker grown in Whitmore. So we gotta do more branding. And Shin and Neil, they're harvesting about 50 acres right now. And I learned a lot from Milton too. Milton was one of the guys who's having a really difficult time because he was leasing land and then now it's sold. So he has to find new land. So the community supports it. The administration has been extremely supportive, and we have a landowner that's willing to sell. Throughout the years, there's been lots of coverages on different components and aspects. This is just a list of all the things we've done and things that we're continuing to do to make sure that the project stays on track. And this is a list of all the money we got from the different years and what got into the budget. So total, it was about 150. So this is my last 2 slides. If you just take this again, I want to show this, because it doesn't matter where you're at, what community. Start with this. Figure this out and see who should go into what puka. And you need to do a geographic mapping too. What assets do you have? How much land do you have? Do you have space for housing? Where are the schools? Really figure all that out. So with that, again, I want to invite all of you guys to July 7th at Pineapple Crate, so you can see our co-working space. And then if you need a copy, feel free to email us. So thank you.
How's it going, everybody? Give Donovan a round of applause. Wasn't that I know for a fact that like half of the room are already champions, right? You guys gonna be champions? Oh man, you have to sell it a little bit harder, bro. All right, you ready for? So I'll ask you the first question only because that was an amazing presentation. But I want to ask you more and go dive into like this. Governor Ige, he established a goal of a double local food production by 2020, Senator. So what is the progress, and what do you think? You think it's an attainable goal?
Stevie here has been working on the Kunia project for 30
years. You gonna duck the question?
No, I'm just giving a preface.
Okay.
So she's been working on the Kunia project for 30 years, very similar to Whitmore Project and what we're trying to do. It can only be done if we have specific goals for specific regions and putting in the right money, resources, and I don't think we've gotten to that point. We have the aspirational goal. Once you start to map it out, then you can figure out, is 2 years achievable or not? We haven't gotten to that step yet.
So the answer is no, everybody. The answer is no. Yeah, well, okay. I'll ask you. Can I ask you? I'll ask you a question. So, can you briefly describe the activity going on in the Cunha Plain and the type of business, community, government friendships that are taking place?
Okay, it's only been 23 years. So, Oahu Sugar went out in 1995. It is now 2018. There's about 6,000 acres in the Cunha area on the west side of Cunha Road, not talking about the east side, which is, was not Campbell. So Campbell sold the property, and it took them till 2006 was the first parcel sold. This is from 1995. This is ag land, all growing weeds now for how many years? So the first parcel sold in 2007, or 6, then 7, then 8, and pretty much then 5 agricultural companies of small farmers and large farmers bought, and plus ourselves, the research organization, bought that land. And it was sold as ag land, and Campbell was pretty good, except for one parcel, of making sure it was bought by ag companies. So it's purchased. It's a little bit different than publicly held land. So those farmers already knew what they wanted to grow, and that's what they did. So we don't have to, we're not telling them what to grow. And that would be somewhat of a problem, because farmers are a little thick-headed sometimes, and they want to grow what they feel is important to grow. And so that's one issue that we still have to deal with, but I think the programs like this, we're talking about friendship and building trust and building communities, is so critical to us going forward. And it's building those communities. We have talked to several tonight about, gee, we do this and we do that, and they're just not coming together. Well, you have to build the trust first, and we have to get them to work together on a specific goal that they all can buy into. And then that builds the trust. And if we don't do that with the private sector, the public sector, the people trying to help, the people trying to do it, it makes it extremely difficult and almost impossible. And we need to get social scientists involved. Just read this great article in National Geographic about that, and the social scientists are starting to understand how our brains work. We don't understand that, and we just keep bucking heads. So I think we start, and I just read this in the last 2 days, so I'm just really excited about it, because April issue of National Geographic is a special issue. So, and it's working. It's working in areas where people are bucking heads, and they're finding out how they work together. And I think that's really exciting, because that's what we need to do. Because we have the private sector and the public sector, you know, and a lot of times it's us versus them, even in the farming community. It's us versus them. It's me versus them. I'm growing papayas. The guy next to me is growing papayas. He's my competitor. They don't realize he's not the competitor.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. I know you guys will be able to ask questions after we do the panel, but the next question goes to Myra. So can you talk a little bit about ADC's activities and some of the challenges it's faced?
So Donovan's presentation was excellent. It gave a very broad overview. You can see that it's enormous. It's ambitious. And we've been chiseling away at it piece by piece. One of the first things we have to do is to get, is to get the infrastructure up and running. So we've worked hard, diligently on acquiring lands. We're continuing to acquire lands from Dole and Castle and Cook as they shut down. But we need the water. We need reservoirs. We need to store the water. We need to help a lot of the farmers, the smaller farmers, amend the soils, which are highly acidic after the monocropping for decades. It's taking a little while. And I think the governor's goal for 2020 was so fast, and maybe we panicked a little. You know, we were trying to find ways to do this quickly so we could show some progress. But the fact of the matter is, infrastructure takes a long time. And so we've been spending a lot of our time with the good graces of the legislature in giving us the funding to improve irrigation systems, to try to get more people on the irrigation systems, ADC has bought, I don't know if you remember, back in 1998 or 9-ish, the Waiahole water system. And we were involved in about 20 years of litigation over the use of the water and the transfer of the water from the windward side to the west side. ADC also runs the Kekaha and Kokei ditches on Kauai, on the west side of Kauai. And it's what we learned, Stevie shared with me the National Geographic article that she was talking about. It's a fascinating read. And it does talk about community. And it's giving me an idea. I have to take this back home to the staff of the other 4 of us and talk about the role of community. We're talking about public-private partnerships. I think we sometimes don't give enough credit, or we don't rely enough upon our community. They're going to be a part of the area. The infrastructure is in their neighborhood, it's in their backyard. The farming is going to go in their backyard. I think we need to consider the psyche, how that works, and whether it would make farming, diversified farming, smaller farming, more successful. Everyone's invested, everyone's more interested, everyone's more willing to work together in these partnerships. The partnering is hard. The silo effect that we talked about earlier, the competing against each other, I guess is the best way to describe it. It makes us look like crabs in a bucket. You know, we're trying so hard to save ourselves that we kind of hurt ourselves in the long run, and we end up cannibalizing ourselves. I think we need to consider maybe a different approach, because we're no longer monocropping huge tracts of land. We're all doing small tracts, as we saw in the slides. We need to aggregate them together, and we need to work together. And I think that's a good starting point. We're going to have a lot of discussion on that in the future.
See that, you guys? National Geographic. I'm subscribing. Honestly, I'm subscribing. Okay, so Donavan, let me ask you a question. The Whitmore Project sounds like a win-win in the effort to increase Hawaii's food security and diversity, the economy, yet at the same time, the state continues to lose agricultural lands to development, as with the Core Ridge Project in central Oahu. Is this something the public needs to worry about?
Yeah.
So I like the kind of answers. Okay.
Well, one of the things that we tried to push in previous legislative sessions are land swaps. So look at land that companies that develop own that are ag land. And if we could swap transit-oriented development land that the state owns along the rail line, so the developers can own land that we want to develop, and the state owns land that we want to throw in ag or conservation or preservation. We tried to push that for several years, but that doesn't seem to have gotten enough steam to get over the finish line.
Why is that?
I don't know how many people think that that's a priority. So the more people hear from agriculture that, hey, they want to preserve ag land, then that might get other legislators to either put money in the budget or to push land swaps.
Okay, awesome. Okay, back to you, Steph. In terms of understanding the historic context of agriculture in Hawaii, let's see, in Hawaii, if you have riches of your perspective, you know, you engage, you research, you look at National Geographic, with your 30-year professional career in ag, and the fact that you are the ED of the HARC, the Farmer Hawaii Sugar Planters Association, can you share your thoughts? Can you share your thoughts on the route most likely to lead Hawaii becoming more food source and sustainable?
Well, we have to have more sessions like this, that afterwards we can get together and share each other's perspective. I have been in the agriculture sector for 40-some years, and during the time that commodity, sugarcane, which is low margins, lots of land, going then to what we've been calling diversified ag, which nobody really can define, but smaller farming, high value, and smaller amounts of land. So how, if you remember, Governor Ariyoshi was the one, I believe, that coined the word diversified agriculture, or his administration did. And that was in the 1970s, if I'm right. So we have been working on this for 48 years at least. And still, as the senator had said, not quite sure how we define what a small farm is or what diversified farming is. But we are transitioning, and we've been transitioning, our organization is still transitioning from being a research entity, a part of a trade association, to now an independent 501c3 research organization for agriculture. And it's been an interesting ride in the last 20 years, this has been going on, to figure out where we fit and how we can help this new form of agriculture, whatever it may be. And it's still making that determination on the private sector. The private sector has to decide what they want to do in agriculture. The public sector can help provide incentives and help formulate how the structure is, help with the land cost, help with the water cost. In Cunilla, just to go back to that a little bit, it is all privately owned. The water, there's two water sources. There's the Cunilla Water Association, which is a well source, and there's the Waihole Ditch that Myra just talked about. Both of those, one of them is a public system that has a Cunilla Water Cooperative. All the farmers are there that buy into that system and work with ADC and making sure it gets developed and taken care of. Then the other one takes care of a couple of wells and, interestingly enough, is now working with R1 water. So it's the first, probably large scale, at least on Oahu, that's using R1 certified water for agriculture. And that only happened through a crisis. Both the wells that were being used for 6 parcels for water, because the wells were not on these 6 parcels. Kind of the situation at Galbraith, where they have 1 well. But we had 2 wells, but they were on, one was on the state land and one was on one of the parcels. But there's 6 parcel owners, and they have to run this well system. And then when both wells went down and nobody was going to get water, the Department of Health stepped in and temporarily allowed the use of R1 water as long as everybody followed certain rules. And that really pushed it to be a permanent process now in the state, to have R1 water certified for agriculture.
Awesome. Okay, Mara, you get the last question. And then we're going to take questions from the audience. Okay, so you hear from farmers on how difficult it is to make a living in Hawaii. What advice do you have for aspiring farmers?
That's always a good one. And again, I'm so stuck right now. I'm so fascinated with the concept of the community and aggregating. And we talked about economies of scale earlier. The best advice is to share, to work together as a farming community, as a residential community, as a business community. I think in Hawaii we are small enough that we have the luxury of getting to know each other personally on a close level. Even if we're business people, we have that luxury. Our businesses tend to be smaller than across the country. We have this luxury just because of where we are and because of our population, the amount of people we have to feed. It's kind of up to us. It's up to us whether we want to try to compete on a national scale in our little island communities, or whether we want to recognize that we are so unique, and the way that we can grow our food is so unique. We hardly talked about aquaculture today, but we're surrounded by water. We have access to fresh water. We have access to brackish water. We have access to salt water. We have so much opportunity, and I think it's a mindset. I think the first thing we have to do to help ourselves and to succeed as small farmers, as medium-sized farmers like Larry Jeffs, is to work together. We're gonna have to put down our guard, step out of our silos, share, participate. I feel strongly about that. And I think the National Geographic...
Okay. I can go down. I can take one section too. Okay, awesome. All right, anybody got questions on this side? All right.
Thank you, guys. So you mentioned like the change from plantation style to kind of these smaller niche like type farms. I guess maybe this is for you, Donovan, or for really any of you. Like, what are we finding that are those types of products? Is that a place that we can rally around? Like, what are going to be the most economically successful ones? Not just what's going to be good to grow. Obviously, that's important. But if we want to incentivize and get people excited, or what are we finding that are some of these really niche success stories that maybe certain communities could be places where that would become like kind of their niche?
Well, I guess I'll talk about Larry Jeffs. He grew watermelon because he knew it was an import replacement. So if we can identify what we can grow at a competitive cost so they can compete with the import, then that's a huge area that we haven't really tapped. Where you grow certain products is going to help determine if it's going to be more expensive or not. You know, you're not going to grow things that shouldn't be grown in dry areas. That's going to be too expensive. And you don't want to grow things that maybe meet in a drier environment in Wahewa. So whatever crop you decide fits in trying to address the import replacement, you have to have the support system or the right geographic area so that you can make money.
Yeah, can I add to that too? The farmer has to do their due diligence. You know, you have to find the right type of soil, the right amount of water, the temperature. We talk to Costco. When Costco does their due diligence, they analyze everything. They bring in their experts to look at everything. Just in Whitmore, Galbraith alone, we have about a 900-foot change in elevation, just in our lands alone. You have to look at that, and the amount of sunlight, the amount of, you have to look at all of that. So matching the crop to the environment, and I still go back to community. I'm so sorry, I'm so stuck on that. But these CSAs that are becoming so popular, I think Hawaii Ag Foundation might even be involved in some part in this community support. The local inside is Hawaii Ag Foundation's CSA. Working with the farmer, you know, tell them what you want, tell them what you want to eat. Something that might help, you know.
But that's not enough to go and do import replacement in our DOE, Myra. You still gotta. We have the state's largest restaurant. So as an ADC and DOA, they need to figure out how do we supply our state's largest restaurant. We can't only be talking about the niche, because
telling me think bigger.
That's too micro. That's too small thinking. How do we supply Foodland, Times Supermarket, Costco? If we're only going to focus on dealing with farmers market, then we're not going to change ag in Hawaii.
That's true. The markets will not even touch you if you don't
So
have
we got to really figure that out.
It feels like that ties to like also changing the palate also.
Yeah, going back to what? Yeah. 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 Yeah, and that's kind of what. Yeah, and that's what I was saying, that Shin and I had that huge discussion with breadfruit. You know, that's going back to how do you use the Food and Wine Festival to introduce new products or different ways to prepare the product so that we get used to it.
I have a question. I've built a couple farm-to-school models in Hawaii, and so I've been working in the cafeterias, buying lots of local food. And one of the things I think I've uncovered is that the food service suppliers, the vendors, are upcharging mainland food like 10 to 30%, but I think they're upcharging local food more like 30 to 100%. And if that's true, then it's going to be really hard for farmers to make money, because the price is going to, the distributors are going to be making the bulk of the money. And I don't know if any of you have studied what I just said, or if you think that the vendors have the same margins for mainland food and local food. But if they are upcharging that much money, then the Whole Foods and the resorts and the fancier chefs are going to be the only ones that can afford it. And I've been in kitchens for a couple of years buying lots of local food, and I'm looking at the pricing, and it's just not like adding up to me. But when I bring this up, everyone says, don't talk about that, right? And I think we have to talk about it. I think that your farming is going to be on a decline unless we can ensure farmers make money. But I don't know what you guys have to say about that.
So you can't necessarily control the whole supplies chain. The sugar industry vertically integrated. So they cut out all the middlemen. They worked together as a huge co-op. So they all grew, they shared research, they shared the distribution channel, they shared the processing. But they were very small margin commodities. So commodities are different than specialties. All right, so the specialty crop folks are going to have to start to learn how to cooperate also. If they go into a co-op and they sell directly to the retailer, they control. So there's got to be a different mindset of some of the farmers. It's just a whole new system that has to develop. To me, we have to have more co-ops. But they're working on GAP certification for all the way down the chain. That is being worked on. There are workshops out there. There are nonprofits that are doing just that. The university's doing it. So that's in process. Everybody knows it's going to be the pull. So if Costco says, we want you to pass this audit, you're going to have to pass it. Okay, so you're going to have to get in line with the new safety certification, and it's going to be a slow process. There's going to be some taken step forward. There'll be incentives from the Department of Agriculture for people to get that. There's incentives there for organic farming. Here to get your certification, you get incentivized. They'll be doing that, I'm sure, for the safety issues as well. And it's going to take a while. And those that don't do it will fall out, and people will step in their place.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to take one more question. I know everybody's excited to ask a question, right? I can see that. But they'll be around and you can ask them questions on them. But we're going to take one more question.
Hi, this question is for Stephanie. As we're talking about building community, how can the tech industry play a part in the role of agriculture and helping to advance to agriculture?
The tech industry is already well into the ag industry. So you have tractors out there that are GPS controlled. The operator just sits there in case anything goes wrong because it's all programmed in. Processing's all programmed. You watch it on computers to see your product go through if you have enough product. I mean, not the 2-acre, 3-acre guy, but a larger where they will have processing. So tech is there already. There's drones. Right now there's a university fellow that is an expert in that. He's over on Kauai doing his internship with the coffee industry to figure out how to use drones for them to fertilize, to water, all the rest of it. It's well implemented in the mainland. We're working to get it more implemented here, and the Department of Ag and the High Tech Development Corporation are partnering together, having workshops, bringing the tech guys and giving them incentives and awards for the best program they can come up with in 24 hours, something like that. So that's being worked on very actively.
All right, thank you guys. Give them a hand. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I just want to say that what's difficult, though, is that the technology is not accessible to everyone because they can't afford it. And even going back to your question, unless the farmer has a good business plan, unless they own their land, they're not going to be able to make the investments. They can't leverage capital. And that's where we have to do more. In buying land, at least we know the state owns it. We can lease it at a certain rate. If we're putting in the infrastructure, that frees up capital. By making sure you're clustering now, if ADC wanted to, they could work with security companies at a level that helps all farmers in the area. So more has to be leveraged so that farmers can have access to capital to purchase technology, though.
All right, thank you guys. Denise?
So, is this on? Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Anyhow, thank you all for being such an amazing audience. I want to thank our speakers again. And before we open up the networking portion of the event, I want to thank our sponsors, our presenting sponsor, Hawaiian Airlines, our supporting sponsors, Alexander and Baldwin, Hawaii Crop Improvement Association, Honolulu Magazine and Honolulu Family, Kamehameha Schools, Lend-Lease, the State of Hawaii, the Ulupono Initiative, and our beverage sponsors for tonight are Fiji Water, Tossware, and Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. And our sponsor and host for this evening, the Modern Honolulu by Diamond Resorts. I want to thank Melanie Kosaka, who has helped me put this series together. She's here tonight. And our staff and volunteers from the Hawaii Agriculture Foundation. I'd also like to personally thank our amazing chefs who have put theory into practice through their creative dishes. Tonight we have Raymond Locaio from Herringbone, Keith Pagina from the Modern Honolulu by Diamond Resorts, Aaron Sigenza from Tamura's Tavern, Guy Smith from Chao Pia Thai, and the Hori family from Hawaiian Pie Company. We hope that you stay connected and continue the conversation beyond tonight with your family, friends, and colleagues, and strangers. Mahalo and enjoy. But I have one more thing. I wanted to plug our Local Inside program. She mentioned it. It's a community-supported agriculture program. And Donavan talked about, the message of buying local is out there. But what this CSA tries to do is it tries to connect the farmer to the person buying that vegetable. So in that CSA, it comes in an insulated bag with 2 ice packs, and you get $25 or more. It costs $25, but you get more than $25 worth of vegetables that all come from Oahu farmers. And through our email and through the bag, you'll learn about the farmers that grow the products. So I encourage you to look into it. You can go on our website, Hawaii Ag Foundation, or localinside.org. And thank you very much, and enjoy yourself tonight.